Hello. Let me show you something. This is a law enforcement manual from 2021 that teaches how to proceed when seizing and accessing digital data. Linked in the description. It is an impressive document in terms of its span. Phones, SD cards, watches, servers, passwords, encryption, drones, laptops, SIM cards, USB drives, gaming consoles, video equipment, and of course, cryptocurrencies. Hardware wallets, paper backups, metal plates, desktop wallets, phone wallets, online wallets, Bitcoin paraphernalia, private keys, public keys, hashes, address formats, QR codes, BIP39 word lists, brain wallets. TLDR. You better be on top of all these things, or the spooks will get you wrecked. The following is a famous quote from the sovereign individual. Most thinking individuals in a world of bankrupt governments will prefer to be well treated as customers of protection services, rather than be plundered as citizens of nation states. The premium paid to be taxed and regulated as a resident of the richest nation states no longer repays its cost. It will be ever less tolerable as competition between jurisdictions intensifies. Those with the earnings ability and capital to meet the competitive challenges of the information age, will be able to locate anywhere and do business anywhere. With a choice of domiciles, only the most patriotic or stupid, will continue to reside in high-tax countries. Of course, most people will assume that this last sentence does not apply to them. Well, it probably does. So, today I want to discuss a hypothetical future scenario, where you move jurisdictions, and might have to go through screening procedures as thorough and severe as those described in the previous document. My goal here is to get you thinking about the issue, and not necessarily offer a golden bullet solution. Simply because, there ain't one. Penn said it best a while ago, in a tweet. The tools discussed on this channel, although they often are Bitcoin centered, are supposed to accomplish exactly that. Self-sovereignty over your speech and data, and the freedom to keep it, transport it, and selectively disclose it, if you so choose. Once you get proficient at this, there are countless ways you can protect yourself from thieves and gangsters. The general principle must be, don't do what your attacker is expecting you to do. So read the document that I link below, and know your attacker. What I'm about to show you, is an instance of this general principle. You might find it relevant to you personally, or not. You just need to adapt the usage of these tools to suit your circumstance. Basically, I am going to set up a server, place it in an undisclosed location, put some secrets in it, and access it later from anywhere in the world. Once I retrieve my secrets from the server, I will be able to wipe them out for good. During the video, I will discuss some pros and cons of such a setup. This is just one example of the kind of things that you can do, relatively securely, if you get acquainted with Linux, GPG, and SSH. You will see me go through a lot of trouble, to avoid typing my secrets in a keyboard, that is connected to my server. The server is only going to hold secrets that have been written and encrypted, elsewhere. Securely and offline. Since the server is only going to host encrypted files, I could rent an anonymous VPS somewhere. But my first choice is to control the hardware myself. Even if it is a closed source Raspberry Pi. Again, everything will be encrypted. Now I will go step by step through the whole process. To complete this guide, I will need a Raspberry Pi and its power supply, a micro SD card, 3 USB drives, a regular computer, and an offline computer like the one I've used in some of my previous videos, without a hard drive or Wi-Fi Bluetooth card. First, I will securely create a couple of Linux Tails bootable USB drives. One of them I will label, Online. I will boot from it, on my regular computer, and download the Ubuntu server OS. I will flash it into a micro SD card and boot from it, in a Raspberry Pi. I will SSH into it, and do some standard server hardening. I will also create a Tor hidden service for SSH. Then, I will boot from the second Tails USB drive. Create a persistent volume, enable GPG, and import my public key from a key server, so I can persist it across sessions. After shutting down, I will label that Tails USB drive as offline. From then on, this device will only be used to boot from my offline computer. A computer without a hard drive, Wi-Fi, or Bluetooth. Here is where I will write my secret files, which I will encrypt with my public key. Then, I will boot from Tails Online, and receive the encrypted files encoded into QR codes. Finally, I will copy the files to my server, over SSH, where they will remain, until I am ready to retrieve them remotely, over Tor. For this setup to work, I am counting on a trusted associate, who will hold the server for me until I am ready to connect to it. When the moment comes, I will ask this trusted party to plug the Raspberry Pi into any home router with an internet connection. In a matter of minutes I will be able to retrieve my data, and wipe the device. If you don't have such a friend or family member available, you can go with the VPS alternative. Although it is a simple task, even a non-technical person can connect two cables. Besides, you can sweeten the deal by enclosing your Raspberry Pi in a cool $10 case, and flash an additional SD card with the gaming OS, RetroPie. It will be all theirs, once they've done their part. Plus it will misdirect the spooks. In this particular setup, I need to know two things: the SSH private key, and the onion address to the SSH listening service. If I'm good at hiding and obfuscating data, I could just have those things on me. Or I could have them encrypted online with a strong cipher. Something memorable that allows me to decrypt it anywhere at any time, without public key cryptography, and without having to hold critical data on me. Given that these are supposed to be short-term workable solutions, the variations are endless. One last comment before I start. When using GPG and SSH keys, you need to be sure that those keys are known only to you. I made a video series about this, where I go through the process of generating keys offline, as securely as possible, and then flashing them into an external hardware security device. I chose a YUBIKEY, because they are widely available. But YUBIKEYs are closed source. If you choose to use a hardware device for dealing with Bitcoin secrets, please get an open source alternative, and definitely generate your keys offline. Download the Tails image, its digital signature, and the signing key. Insert a USB drive. Make sure to unmount any existing partitions, and flash the Tails image with the copy command. When it's finished, boot from it. You don't need an internet connection for this step. I will use this Tails as an intermediary, to securely create my online and offline Tails bootable USB drives. Go to Tails installer, and clone the OS into a brand new USB drive. And again with a second brand new USB drive. Physically label these devices as online and offline. Boot from online Tails, and provide an administration password. To avoid confusion, whenever I boot from Tails Online, I will change the default background image. Go to releases.ubuntu.com and follow the links. CD image server, releases, latest release, release. Get the checksums file and its digital signature. This is the Ubuntu Server OS image for Raspberry Pi. I will get the signing key, and check the digital signature. Everything is okay. Now I need to install one package. Let's update first. Install Nmap. I have everything I need to turn my Raspberry Pi into a server. So here we go. Open the Disks application. Insert a brand new micro SD into your PC. Click on Restore Disk Image, and select the Ubuntu server file that you just got. Insert this card into your Raspberry Pi. Power it up, and wait a couple of minutes. With the following command, I will list the devices connected in my local network. I don't recognize this IP. This must be the Raspberry Pi. SSH as the user Ubuntu. The password is also Ubuntu. You will be forced to change it on your first login. And try again with the new password. Once you are in, update and upgrade. Make sure that the Raspberry Pi's EEPROM is updated. Mine is. If yours is not, add to the previous command, the option A. Reboot, and wait a couple of minutes. Now, some standard hardening procedures. Install Fail to Ban, an intrusion prevention software that will protect your server against SSH brute force attacks. Enable it, and start it. Disallow all incoming connections to the server, except for SSH. Now edit the SSH server configuration file. Disallow, root, login. Make user Ubuntu the only one that can SSH into the server. And most important of all, disallow password authentication. From now on, I am going to SSH into the server, using public key cryptography. I will get my public key from a key server. That is my key, alright. I will import it and trust it fully. I will print to screen my SSH public key and add it to the SSH authorized keys file on the server. The following command will allow me to use a PGP key for SSH authentication. I hold this key on an external hardware security device. To apply the changes to the SSH server, restart it. I will keep this SSH connection going, just in case, and try to establish a new one. Testing my external security device that holds my SSH key. OK. I'll try to SSH in. Notice that since I disallowed password authentication, the only way of accessing the server now is providing a cryptographic proof that I own the SSH key that I added into the authorized keys file. Now that I've checked that the new SSH configuration works, I can safely log out from my previous session. Careful with these things. You don't want to lock yourself out from your own server. The last thing I will do in the server is creating a Tor hidden service for SSH. To do this, first I need to install the Tor daemon. Click on Support, search for Debian repository, and follow the instructions. The Tor daemon is running and enabled. Now I will edit the Tor configuration file and create a hidden service for SSH. To apply the changes, reload Tor. Now, the manner in which you keep this address safely stored depends on your personal strategy. You can write it into a file and copy it into a brand new USB drive. You can use encryption, or not. You can write it by hand if you want. You can upload it somewhere. Or if you have a secure device, like a phone with Graphene OS installed, you could just scan it. Don't make it obvious. Hide it. Either with cunning, or in plain view. Use misdirection. Obfuscate its meaning. This is totally up to you, and what you're comfortable with. Just make sure that you can access your SSH keys, and the onion address to the SSH listening service. Now I am booting my offline tails, from my online computer. I will do this just twice. First, to persist the GPG data directory across sessions, and second, to import my own PGP keys. Configure persistent volume. Provide a strong passphrase and enable GPG. Now I will unlock my persistent storage and connect to the internet. I will get my PGP public key from a key server, and import it into my system. From now on, the Tails offline USB drive will only touch my offline computer. If at any point in time you stop using this setup, you will physically destroy this USB device. I am offline, in a computer without a hard drive, or a Wi-Fi Bluetooth card. This computer will never touch the internet. As with the USB drive, if at any point in time, I want to stop using this device for this purpose, I will physically destroy it. This is very important. If you cannot manage this, stop, right now. Okay. I will now write my secret files. Since I am using Bitcoin as an example, I am going to assume that I already have a seed, backed up on a piece of paper, and a strong BIP39 passphrase. If you have multiple seeds and passphrases, I would recommend that you write them separately, in individual files. Now I will create armored encrypted files of my secrets. Great. Now I need to encode this blocks of text into QR codes. You can pipe the contents of the files into the QR command. Depending on the resolution and size of your screen, you might have issues later, when trying to scan these QR codes from another device. It will probably be fine, but let me redirect the output of the QR command, to a file that can be opened by the Tails image viewer. Leave this Tails offline session running, and boot from Tails Online. We are going to transfer our encrypted secrets. There's no need to connect to the internet. To decode any QR code, you can use Electrum Wallet. Scan the Tails offline screen and recreate the seed file. Go back, and let's do this again. Back in Tails Offline, full screen the pass image. We got them. As you can see, these are properly encrypted files. My SSH keys are in my external hardware security device. I will get it ready. To copy my secrets into the server, I am going to use the Secure File Copy command, SCP. It uses SSH for transferring data between hosts. The syntax is really simple. I type SCP, the source files, and the destination. If I just add a colon at the end, without specifying a path, the files will be copied to Ubuntu's home. Let's check. So this is what I've done. My secrets are in a server, only accessible with an SSH private key, created offline, that I hold in an external hardware security device. The secrets were written in an air-gapped device, and the encryption keys themselves were also generated offline. I have moved data from one device to another in two ways, either using QR codes in a private way, or using encrypted SSH connections. And the transferred data itself has always been encrypted. I am ready to connect to my server from anywhere in the world. I only need two things: an SSH private key, and an onion address. There's myriad ways I could have hidden this data. Remember that you're not limited to just one way of doing things. You can have multiple strategies going on simultaneously. If you choose to personally hold this data, think about the document I showed you at the beginning, and let me offer the following advice. Obfuscation is great, but plausible deniability is even better. I'm booting from a Linux Tails OS from somewhere in the world, and I just received confirmation from my friend back home that the Raspberry Pi I gave him has just been connected to his home router after some weeks of gathering dust in a drawer. First, I will import my public key. I have restored my SSH private key into a hardware security device. I will get it ready. And I have just retrieved the onion address using my phone. I will encode it into a QR code. I will use the scanner in Electrum. Now I will get the files from the server, over Tor. Got 'em. I will SSH into the server, and wipe them out. Please research the shred command. It is the easiest way of erasing data in Linux. The command, remove, will not wipe data from your storage. The command shred, will. These files are gone forever from the server, and at this point, I could start shredding stuff. I will leave that to you. Do some research on shred, and destroy the data in the micro SD card. It will be fun. One final check. I happen to have the PGP encryption keys on my hardware security device, so I will go on and decrypt the secret files. Of course, if this was for real, I wouldn't do it this way. Rather, I would move the files into an offline computer, through QR codes, and decrypt them there. If I were to be dealing with Bitcoin secrets, I would definitely move all of it into new private keys, generated with dice, in a cold card. Or, you could just memorize 12 words. Until next time.